Hey, welcome back to another mind-blowing episode of Mikey's Video Game Madness. Today we'll be covering Medal of Honor Heroes 2 for the Nintendo Wii. Yeah, another Wii game. How exciting. This was also, I believe, available for the Sony PlayStation Portable, or PSP, if you like to give things cute little nicknames. For the PlayStation Portable, it didn't have all the features this game did. I actually think this game had online play, but I never played online play ever on a Wii game that I can recall. I didn't really play that much on the PlayStation 3 except with, I guess, the Battlefield games. Tried Call of Duty a few times, never got too much into it. But, yeah, the PSP first-person shooters were always kind of not that great in my opinion, at least because it didn't have two analog sticks, and that's something they obviously put on the Vita because I think Sony had an issue with it too. And so basically you had to use the face buttons, triangle, circle, was it triangle, square, X, and circle. I don't know why I couldn't think of the PlayStation face buttons there, but you had to use those as a directional pad. The old Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast games used to have to do that too, and I guess for the PlayStation 1 for a while, until they came out with the DualShock controller. A lot of people don't know this, but there was actually an analog controller even before the DualShock controller came back. It just didn't have the feedback. I think the first analog controller had feedback in Japan, and for some reason they didn't bring it here. But anyway, this game's kind of cool because it is cool. It's not kind of cool. First of all, it's a very functional first-person shooter for the Nintendo Wii, which is kind of hard to imagine with the limited buttons. This is a very heavy motion control game, so this is one of those games I personally feel like I can only play in short bursts. You might be able to marathon game. There's not a whole lot of levels on it, but this is actually like two games in one. One thing that sets this apart from the PSP version, beside the way it controls, is that there's actually two games in this. There's an actual arcade game and then a traditional first-person shooter game, which makes up for the length of the game because it's somewhat short. So basically you can play the game like this, or you can play it in arcade mode, which you'll eventually see in this video, so don't feel like I ripped you off or anything. The graphics are fairly decent for a Wii game. They don't look as good as obviously the first party Nintendo developed games, but it looks quite good. Controls quite well. I haven't played a lot of first person shooters on the Nintendo Wii. I've played a lot of motion control games that have been really awkward to the point where I feel like it makes the game worse. This feels really responsive. The only reason why I'm dying is because I have basically controller or gamepad controls embedded in my mind, so I'm trying to unlearn and relearn how to play a game at the same time while I'm trying to record this, so that's why I'm so awkward. It carries over some of the arcade elements from Medal of Honor European Assault. As you can see, there's like a big grenade floating there, and there's little things hovering around. This came out around the same time that couldn't think of the name real quick. Sorry, just had a brain fart there. This came out around the same time as Medal of Honor Airborne. This was one of the last first-person shooter Medal of Honors. I thought it was shovelware when I first saw it, and then I looked more into it because I was curious about it. Because there was this game that came out when Medal of Honor Airborne came out called Medal of Honor Vanguard, and it came out for the PlayStation 2 and the Wii. It might have came out for the PSP. There's a lot of releases for the PSP that came out that I'm not aware of. I actually have 2 PSPs, and I'm not even aware of half of the library, which is a shame because there's a lot of good RPGs and stuff on the system that just went under the radar. I really should look into collecting it more. If you're interested in collecting for the PSP, I highly recommend looking into it because you can get a cheap broken PSP and repair it like super cheap. I wouldn't even go and buy like a new one. It's cheaper just to buy the replacement parts. Like I bought like a limited Star Wars PSP, I think for like $20 or whatever, and the screen was like $20. So for less than the price of a brand new game, I got a brand new little handheld, and I just replaced the screen on it. You just open it up with one of those little eyeglass screwdrivers and you're good to go, and you just replace the screen, which is basically held in by a ribbon cable. It was surprisingly easy, and I don't know, it's a good little system to have. And if you're into the modding community, which I never modded my PSP, but there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with it, as well as play emulators. I don't know how well some of them would run because I don't know the power of the PSP, but I did see somebody running on Nintendo 64 emulator, which is probably the most powerful system at that time because it was when the PSP was fairly new. It was the most powerful system at the time that I saw emulate it, where at that time I even saw PCs struggling emulating that. So I think it can do a fairly good job. I haven't seen a lot of modifications with the Vita, but you know, it's a pretty nice system still. I wouldn't want to take something like that apart, and they're still fairly expensive. You know, the Vita would be so much of a better system if it didn't have that damn expensive memory card. Like my PlayStation Plus subscription, I always like put the stuff in my library, but I can't even play half of the games because there's stuff that I don't want to erase off of my PlayStation Vita, and I'm not paying like a small fortune for a little memory card. So even though there's like a ton of great games to download for that system, and that's what's essentially keeping the system alive, you can barely put anything on it. Like after like 3 or 4 games, if you have I think I have a 4 gig memory card on it. It's either 4 or 8, but it's like, it was like $50 just for one of those. Like you can buy like SD cards like that aren't made by Sony, like so much cheaper. I don't know why they did that, because I know why they did that, because they feel like you're forced to buy that card or whatever, but I don't know how they didn't know that that was going to be a failure are held against them. Even the Nintendo 3DS, as finicky as Nintendo is about things, like even they just put like a regular SD card slot in there, which are super cheap and whatever. Anyway, I should be talking about this game. This game controls quite well. Obviously, I'm failing at it. I beat this level fairly quickly. This game goes by pretty darn fast, but it's 2 games in one, so there's only so much complaining. There's not a lot of games like this out there. The only other serious first-person shooter game that I remember playing was Call of Duty World at War, and it was actually a port of the 360 and the PlayStation 3 versions and PC, and it was actually fairly decent. Obviously, it didn't look as good, but I remember after that, they came out with Modern Warfare 1, and it was supposed to be a big deal. How could they fit that on this system, and how does it control so well? And I was like, they had World at War. To me, World at War looked way better than Modern Warfare, and it had that fire and stuff that actually spread, and the towns when you're playing like the Russian levels and stuff like that, I thought were way more advanced than anything the Modern Warfare game was being thrown at it. You'll have to excuse me. I actually worked today and I'm quite tired. I shouldn't be making excuses. I should just be making good videos. But you know, I'm trying to make good videos. That's why I make videos. So yeah, like the motion controls work great. It's just trying to get used to that different way of controlling the game, which I'm struggling with, because it's kind of weird to move the cursor around and it moves your camera at the same time. And it's different because if you play a first person shooter on any other platform that doesn't use motion controls, like whenever you move the cursor, it's always dead center in the middle and the camera moves, but the cursor always stays dead center in the middle. Where this, you actually have to take the cursor and put it at the edge of the screen and turn around. And that's sort of hard. I think the hardest part to get used to. Like when there's a bunch of enemies sort of in the middle of the screen, it's a lot easier to aim and stuff like that. I do enjoy the little speaker on the controller. The PlayStation 4 has it too. The Modern Warfare remastered version, and actually the first Tomb Raider remastered, the definitive edition, had like gun sound effects like this does. And I think even though it's subtle, it adds so much to the game. This one, in order to reload, you can either push up on the D-pad, which is the little D-pad on the one Wii remote that's like rectangular, and then it has like the nunchuck with the analog stick, and that's what you use your movement with. But it's kind of cool that instead of using the manual reload button, I just died there because I wanted to switch to the arcade mode to show you what that's like, which is also a blast. You actually have to flip the motion controller upwards, and it's kind of funny because the controller actually makes a little reloading sound and stuff like that. Little things like that add immersion, even though they're super gimmicky, I really like. And this kind of really surprised me. This might have been the last World War II Medal of Honor game that I remember coming out, because I'm pretty sure this came out even after Airborne. And then of course Medal of Honor went to the Modern Warfare theme, where everything went to fighting in Afghanistan and stuff like that. It sort of went in the same direction that Call of Duty did, which it was on its own a good game, but I kind of liked it where like one game was set in modern times and the other game was set in the past. It added more variety instead of the games like trying to emulate each other. But this was a cool product because this had like a regular mode, and then it has this arcade mode, which a lot of modern arcade games have games like this. They're not really true light gun games. They're like motion control games if you look at them, because LCDs work differently than the CRT television, so you can't have a proper light gun game. So this really emulates kind of like some of the arcade games that you see now, that if you can call it arcade, sometimes you go to the mall and it'll be like arcade, and there's like 50 like machines that give out tickets that aren't video games at all. And then in the way back there's usually like a game with a gun, but it's really like a Wii remote type deal where it has like an infrared sensor on it and stuff like that, and probably has like some sort of gyroscope inside that picks up like the way the gun's being held and stuff like that. Basically it works essentially like a Wii remote, like the Terminator game. Trying to think, I know they had some ports of some light gun games on the Nintendo Wii, like I think it was called, it's a ridiculous name, LA Machine Guns. That game was so much fun in the arcade. When I worked at the mall for a brief amount of time during the holidays, like on my lunch break, I would play that. It had like some sort of crappy little motor inside of it that would like tap the gun, so it felt like you were, well, I'm sure a machine gun has more power than like a piece of plastic like hitting the side of the gun on the inside. But again, little gimmicks like that were really immersive. And there's like an alien like gun game, but like I said, they weren't light gun games. They were like this, where they use motion controls. They created the illusion. A lot of times, some of these gun games, like the gun you couldn't even pick up, it was like stuck to a I'm just gonna call it a tripod. It was like stuck to a base that you can move the gun around or whatever. Some of them let you pick up the gun, but they weren't true light gun games, because most of the games had like big HD screens, and light gun games don't work with that. Maybe there's a trick of how they could, but I think it has something to do with the. I remember looking up a long time ago, but I think it has something to do with the brightness of the screen, which maybe with HDR they can do it, but it also has to do with input lag and stuff like that, because the gun has to be able to pick up the flashes to make it responsive, and maybe by the time the gun picks up the flash, like something else is actually going on in the inside of the game, and the game's actually displaying a few seconds later. I don't know, hopefully that made sense. I'm sure on Wikipedia or some website dedicated to light guns they could explain it better, but this is really fun. I made the mistake of getting a Luger on this game. I still didn't switch to it yet, so I guess I just spoiled that for you. But yeah, this is very arcade-like, and you know, this is one thing I can say about the Wii. With games like this, it really brought the arcade feeling home. The PlayStation 3 did have some motion control games like this, but you had to buy a camera. You had to buy the little wands now that they're using for the PlayStation VR, and it was kind of a pain in the ass. They even had like a gigantic plastic gun, which I'm guessing if you had all this stuff, it probably worked great with the few light gun games that they had, like House of the Dead Overkill, which I have. I just play it with the controller. I doubt I'll ever be able to beat it with the controller unless I put it on super easy, if that's even an option. I haven't played it in a while. I don't know why I didn't do a video of that. But that game's a blast even with the controller, even if I'm not good at it. But this is coming from a dude that played House of the Dead 2 with a Dreamcast controller, which that analog stick does not hold up well at all. Sorry, Dreamcast fanboys. I love the Dreamcast too, and fangirls. Although I never saw a girl really cover a video of the Dreamcast, but I'm sure they're out there. But yeah, like, the thing about the Wii that was great about the arcade experience and the games that really benefited from motion controls that were like this is that you had everything. You didn't need anything extra, even with the little add-ons. Like with the zapper, all it did was really encase your controller. You could still use the motion controls and stuff like that. Of course, they had the Wii Pad or whatever, and then the Wii Motion Plus that came out, and not a lot of things supported that, but that was like towards the end of the life cycle. Although I will say, like, some of the games that you got with it actually came with it, like that Zelda game that uses the Wii Motion Plus. It's worth it though, because that's one weakness of the Wii motion control. Sorry, my phone just went off and it caught me off guard. That's one weakness of the Wii's regular motion controls, is if you move it too fast, the game doesn't pick it up. So with the Wii, you kind of have to get used to how fast you can move the remote and stuff like that in order for the game to pick it up, because sometimes you get excited and move the remote too fast and it loses track. And the Wii Motion Plus kind of fixed that. And then that Zelda game that came out, which I covered, I might cover it again because it's such a cool game. Like, it moves like your sword exactly the way that like you hold it and your shield and everything. It's awesome. But this is Medal of Honor's Heroes 2. It's an awesome game if you own a Wii. I would definitely check it out. It's not shovelware. Hope you're all doing well. Take care.